Night wrapped the Rossi vineyard in a living hush, the kind that felt thick enough to breathe. Rows of ancient vines stretched endlessly beneath the moonlight, their twisted silhouettes whispering with every faint breeze. Crickets stitched a steady rhythm into the darkness, an invisible orchestra performing for no audience at all. The air carried the scent of damp earth and crushed leaves, a mineral-rich perfume born from volcanic soil and centuries of cultivation. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called once, then fell silent, as if the land itself were holding its breath. Between the vines, a small disturbance broke the vineyard's pristine order. Leaves rustled softly, brushing against denim and bare skin as careful hands parted the undergrowth. A trowel slipped into the soil, meeting resistance, then yielding with a muted scrape. Each movement was deliberate, almost reverent, as if the ground were sacred and might object if treated too roughly. Clumps of dark earth were lifted and turned, releasing a deeper, wetter smell of iron, fungus, and raw life. The sudden click of a heavy flashlight shattered the intimacy of the moment. A sharp beam cut through the darkness like a blade, illuminating floating dust and the startled outline of a crouched figure. Shadows leapt violently across the vines as the light moved. The vineyard transformed from quiet sanctuary into a place under interrogation, every leaf and trellis exposed.
You know, most thieves steal the grapes. You seem to be stealing the dirt.
The voice came from beyond the light, deep and resonant, carrying easily through the open rows. It was a voice accustomed to obedience and to echoing across land that answered to its name. The words settled heavily in the air with calm certainty, suggesting there was nowhere to run and nowhere to hide. I was not stealing. I was sampling. She gasped as the trowel slipped from her fingers and struck a stone with a soft metallic clink. Her heart hammered against her ribs as adrenaline flooded her limbs. She raised her trembling hands, palms smeared with dirt, feeling painfully small beneath the towering vines and the unseen presence watching her.
Sampling soil on private property at 2 in the morning is called trespassing. Trespassing on the Rossi estate usually ends with a lawsuit. Stand up.
Heavy boots crunched against gravel as he approached, each step measured and unhurried. The sound carried authority, the confidence of someone who knew the land belonged to him. The distance between them closed slowly, tightening the tension like a drawn wire. "Mr. Rossi, please, I am a botanist. I am finishing my thesis on volcanic soil micronutrients. Your vineyard is legendary. I only needed one sample." She rose to her feet and brushed dirt from her knees with quick, nervous motions that did little to restore her dignity. Smears of soil clung to her clothes as evidence of her intrusion. Her voice steadied as she spoke, clinging to the language of science like a shield.
You are a student?
He stopped directly in front of her, the flashlight beam fixed and unblinking. His presence was overwhelming in its stillness. The land itself seemed to rise with him, generations of ownership pressing silently between them. "Yes, and I am broke, so suing me would be a waste of your expensive lawyers." The flashlight tilted upward and briefly caught her eyes before settling on her face. He studied her with patience, weighing risk and reward. A smear of dirt marked her cheek, and the scent of rain clung to her hair and clothes.
You have dirt on your cheek, and you smell like rain. Tell me what this dirt tells you.
He bent and scooped up the loose soil she had unearthed. The earth rested in his palm, dark and unassuming, yet heavy with implication. For a moment, they were connected by that single handful of ground. "It tells me your vines are sick. The pH is off, and there is a fungal infection starting in the roots. You cannot see it yet, but I can smell it. If you do not fix it, this year's harvest will be vinegar." Her words spilled out with quiet urgency as fear gave way to conviction. This was her language and her truth. In her mind, data replaced danger, and the vineyard became a living system crying out for intervention.
My head viticulturist says the vines are healthy.
Silence followed, dense and uncomfortable. The crickets seemed to fade as if waiting. Something shifted behind Dominic's eyes, a calculation, as the dirt slipped through his fingers and fell back to the ground. Your head viticulturist is wrong. I am right. The claim hung between them, audacious and dangerous. She knew it the moment the words left her mouth, yet she did not take them back. Retreat now would mean betraying everything she believed.
That is a very arrogant claim for a girl trespassing in the dark. But I am curious. Come with me.
He stepped closer, his shadow swallowing hers. The threat remained, coiled and ready, but it now shared space with sharp interest. The vineyard felt less like a crime scene and more like a crossroads. Where? To the police.
To the lab, prove it. If you are wrong, I call the police. If you are right, I offer you a job.
The terms were delivered calmly, yet they carried the weight of a life-changing gamble. Above them, the vines rustled softly as indifferent witnesses to a bargain struck in darkness. Beneath their feet, the soil waited, silent, sick, and full of truth. The estate swallowed sound as soon as they crossed its threshold. Vast hallways stretched like stone arteries, their polished surfaces reflecting cold white light that hummed faintly from hidden fixtures. Every footstep echoed twice, once from the marble floor and again from the vaulted ceilings above, creating the impression that the building itself was listening. At the far end, a reinforced glass door slid open to reveal a laboratory that felt surgically precise, a place where wealth met science and neither tolerated imperfection. Inside the lab, the air changed. It smelled faintly of alcohol wipes, metal, and something green and alive, trapped in samples and petri dishes. Screens glowed with graphs and soil metrics, while a microscope sat at the center like an altar. Its lenses clicked softly as adjustments were made, each mechanical whisper accompanied by the staccato rhythm of keys being typed, data captured before it could vanish into uncertainty. Look, under the microscope, see those spores? Botrytis cinerea, but a mutated strain, it attacks the sugar production. Dominic bent toward the microscope, his posture tense, as though bracing himself for bad news he already suspected. The sterile light carved sharp lines into his face, highlighting the sleepless focus of a man whose empire depended on invisible processes beneath the soil. His eye met the lens, and the world narrowed to a circle of magnified truth, blooming with contamination that should not have been there.
Damn it.
He straightened abruptly, the chair scraping softly behind him. One hand rose to his temples, fingers pressing in slow, deliberate circles, as if he could physically push the problem back into the microscope. For a moment, the confidence he wore like tailored clothing slipped, revealing the strain of responsibility measured not just in money, but in legacy.
This crop is worth $20 million, the reserve vintage. If this spreads...
Lily did not hesitate. Her calm stood in stark contrast to the silent panic vibrating through the room. She had seen this before, not in estates like this, but in struggling fields where one mistake meant ruin. Knowledge steadied her spine, and certainty sharpened her voice. It will spread, fast, unless you treat the soil with a copper sulfate mix immediately. Dominic turned toward her slowly, as if recalibrating his understanding of the person standing in front of him. His gaze locked onto hers, intense and measuring, the look of a man reassessing power dynamics in real time. The lab lights caught in his eyes, making them hard and reflective, like cut stone.
You just saved my harvest. What is your name?
For the first time, Lily felt the full weight of his attention. Not dismissive, not indulgent, but sharp with interest. The silence between them stretched, filled with the quiet hum of machines that suddenly felt irrelevant. Lily. He repeated it as though testing its texture, rolling it through his thoughts and comparing it to the image he had already formed.
Lily, like the flower, fragile. But you play in the dirt.
He moved to the desk and opened a drawer with decisive finality. Paper slid against wood as he withdrew a contract, its edges crisp, its presence heavy with implication. This was not an impulsive man. Every gesture suggested long practice in making decisions that altered lives.
My viticulturist is fired as of this moment. I need someone who can see what others miss. I want you to stay.
The words landed harder than Lily expected. Stay did not mean a few extra hours or a consulting fee. It meant crossing an invisible boundary, stepping into a world defined by his rules. Stay here? Dominic circled the desk, each step unhurried, predatory in its confidence. He leaned back against the polished surface, claiming the space effortlessly, as if the estate itself were an extension of his body.
I have a guest villa. You will live here until the harvest is complete. I need you monitoring the soil every day. I will pay off your student loans and triple your current salary.
Shock rippled through Lily, a physical sensation that tightened her chest and stole her breath. Numbers she had spent years avoiding suddenly vanished, wiped clean by the casual promise in his voice. That's too much money. He stepped closer, resting his weight against the desk, his presence commanding without raising his voice. There was no negotiation in him, only declaration.
I don't pay for the work, Lily. I pay for the obsession. I see it in your eyes. You are obsessed with nature. I am obsessed with wine. We speak the same language. Do we have a deal?
The lab seemed to hold its breath. Lily weighed fear against opportunity, independence against recognition, and felt the unmistakable pull of being truly seen for the first time. Yes, deal. A thin smile crossed Dominic's face, not warm, but satisfied, the expression of a man who had secured something rare.
Good, go to your room. Dinner's at 8. Do not be late. I have standards.
The dining room existed in a carefully curated stillness, a space designed to impress without ever appearing to try. A long table of dark, polished wood reflected the low, amber glow of the chandelier above, its crystal facets catching the light like restrained stars. Porcelain plates rested with geometric precision, while silverware lay aligned as if measured by a ruler, each piece faintly chiming whenever a hand shifted. Classical music drifted through hidden speakers, not loud enough to demand attention, yet persistent enough to set a tempo for every movement and every breath. The room smelled of butter, earth, and wine, a sensory balance between luxury and restraint. Wine flowed into crystal glasses with a soft, controlled cascade, the liquid catching light as it settled. The sound felt intimate in the silence, like a secret being poured out slowly. Lily sat at the table with shoulders slightly tense, aware of every detail. The weight of the chair beneath her, the stiffness of the fabric against her back, and the way the table seemed too large for just two people. Across from her sat Dominic Rossi, a man whose presence seemed to organize the space around him, as if the room itself deferred to his authority.
You are holding the fork wrong.
The words landed with surgical precision. Lily's hand halted mid-motion, the fork suspended above the plate as though gravity itself had briefly released its claim. A flush crept up her neck, heat blooming beneath her skin. The room felt suddenly louder, the clink of silverware echoing in her ears, and the music sharpening instead of soothing. She became acutely aware of her posture, her hands, and the way she occupied space that was never designed with her in mind. "I'm sorry, I'm used to eating ramen in my dorm." Her apology came out smaller than she intended, shaped by years of adapting and shrinking just enough to fit into rooms like this. Dominic exhaled in a controlled way, and his chair slid back with a muted scrape against the floor. The sound drew a clean line through the tension, announcing his movement before he spoke. Lily's pulse quickened as anticipation and embarrassment tangled together while she waited.
Relax. I am not scolding you. I am teaching you. If you are to be my lead scientist, you will dine with investors. You must look the part.
He stepped closer, the space behind Lily filling with his presence. When he stood behind her, the air seemed to shift, warmer and heavier. His hands came down over hers, fingers closing gently around her grip on the silverware. The contact was deliberate and instructive, guiding rather than forcing as he repositioned her fingers with patience. Time stretched as she registered the heat of his skin against her own.
Like this, soft grip, elegant. You treat the silver like you treat the roots of a plant, gently.
The analogy anchored her, grounding the moment in something familiar. She thought of soil and patience, and of how life responded not to force, but to care. Her breath caught despite herself, a sharp inhale she could not suppress. The room seemed to narrow to the point where his hands guided hers, and the rest of the world dissolved into background noise. "Your hands are warm." Dominic did not pull away. Instead, his voice came closer as his presence folded in around her, as if the lesson required proximity. He noticed the tremor in her fingers and the unconscious rhythm of her tightening and loosening grip. The shift in power was subtle, unspoken, but understood.
And yours are trembling. Are you afraid of me, Lily?
The question hovered, intimate rather than accusatory. Lily swallowed as the truth pressed against her ribs. She had studied complex systems and mapped invisible networks of cause and effect, yet nothing had prepared her for the intensity of being seen so clearly. She straightened slightly and gathered herself. "You're Dominic Rossi. You own half the valley. Of course I'm intimidated." A pause followed, dense with meaning. Dominic leaned closer until his breath brushed her ear and his voice lowered into something confidential. The grand dining room, the wealth and the power receded, leaving only two people negotiating something more personal than etiquette.
Do not be. I may be a king in this valley, but without you, my kingdom turns to dust. You hold the power now. Eat.
He withdrew just enough to give her space, the lesson complete and the command unmistakable. Lily lifted the fork as instructed, her movements careful but steadier. She took a bite as flavors bloomed across her tongue, rich and layered yet comforting in their simplicity. The tension in her shoulders eased, replaced by cautious appreciation. "It's delicious." Dominic watched her reaction closely, satisfaction flickering briefly across his expression. He returned to his seat, and the balance of the room settled once more, though something fundamental had shifted between them.
It is truffle pasta. Simple. Earthy. Just like you.
The heavy wooden door did not simply open. It protested, its ancient hinges releasing a long, aching groan that seemed to come from the bones of the estate itself. As the door parted, a breath of cold air spilled outward, damp and mineral-rich, carrying the unmistakable chill of underground stone. The cellar beyond felt cavernous, its silence layered with echoes, as if generations of whispered conversations and clinking glasses had soaked into the walls and never quite left. Their footsteps followed, slow and deliberate, striking the stone floor and rebounding into the vaulted darkness. Each step created a hollow echo that chased the last, multiplying and fading in overlapping waves. The sound made the space feel larger than it was, a subterranean cathedral dedicated not to prayer, but to time itself. Moisture clung to the air, beading invisibly on skin and fabric, while the smell of earth, wood, and age wrapped around them like a second skin.
This is the heart of the estate, the reserve cellar. Some of these bottles are older than your grandfather.
As Dominic spoke, the cellar revealed itself in slow detail, endless rows of oak racks stretching into shadow, each cradle holding dark glass bottles dusted with fine gray sediment. The labels were yellowed, some barely legible, their ink softened by decades of patient waiting. The barrels nearby were massive and scarred, their surfaces stained by wine and time, exuding a quiet authority, as if they were guardians standing watch over the liquid history they contained. "It smells ancient, oak and berries." Lily drew in a cautious breath, and the scent seemed to bloom inside her chest. It was not a single smell, but layers upon layers. Damp wood, dried fruit, faint sweetness tangled with something darker and more serious. The air tasted old, not stale, but seasoned, like a story that had been told so many times it had gained weight and texture. The cellar invited reverence, demanding stillness.
It smells like patience.
Dominic reached into the rack with practiced ease, his fingers confident as they closed around the neck of a single bottle. Dust came away at his touch, drifting briefly before settling again. He held the bottle up, angling it toward the dim light, inspecting it as one might study a rare artifact. There was care in the movement and ownership, not just of the wine, but of the knowledge behind it.
1985. A perfect year. Hot summer, cool autumn. The grapes suffer just enough. That is the secret, Lily. Great wine comes from suffering, from struggle.
The bottle seemed heavier in his hands as he spoke, weighted by the meaning he assigned to it. The year was not just a date, but a memory, a balance of hardship and restraint. In the stillness of the cellar, his words lingered, settling into the space like sediment. The idea of suffering transformed, becoming something purposeful, almost noble, when framed through his quiet conviction. Like people, the question slipped out softly, tentative yet sincere, and it hovered between them. Lily's gaze lifted from the bottle to Dominic's face, searching for confirmation or correction. In the low light, her expression was open and unguarded, as if the cellar itself had stripped away some invisible layer of caution.
Exactly like people?
He looked at her then, fully, his attention sharpening. The moment stretched, unhurried, as though the cellar encouraged pauses and contemplation. The surrounding bottles bore silent witness, their long vigil lending gravity to the exchange, turning a simple agreement into something more intimate and deliberate. With a controlled twist, Dominic worked the cork free. The pop was crisp and resonant, echoing softly through the cellar like a punctuation mark. Wine flowed next, a deep, velvety stream slipping into the glass with a muted, liquid whisper. The sound was intimate and ceremonial, underscoring the care with which the moment was being constructed.
Taste it.
I do not know anything about wine tasting. Lily hesitated, the glass cool against her fingers. The dark surface of the wine reflected the low light, unreadable and dense. Uncertainty flickered across her face, a brief reminder of how foreign this ritual felt to her. Surrounded by symbols of expertise and refinement she had never been taught to navigate.
I will teach you. Hold the glass by the stem, swirl it, release the aroma. Now close your eyes.
His voice guided her with calm authority, each instruction delivered as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Lily adjusted her grip, mimicking his example, and gently rotated her wrist. The wine responded, coating the glass in slow-moving legs. When she closed her eyes, the cellar seemed to fall away, leaving only the weight of the glass and the presence beside her. Okay. Her eyelids fluttered shut, shutting out the dim rows of bottles and the looming barrels. In the darkness behind her eyes, her other senses sharpened. She became acutely aware of her own breathing, of the nearness of Dominic, of the cool air brushing her skin like a held breath.
Inhale deeply. What do you smell?
The instruction felt intimate, almost invasive, as if he were asking her to open something internal and unguarded. She inhaled slowly, letting the scent rise, allowing it to fill her completely. The cellar seemed to listen, suspended in expectation. Cherries, leather, and tobacco? The words came cautiously at first, then with growing confidence. Each scent she named seemed to anchor her more firmly in the experience, transforming uncertainty into discovery. The wine revealed itself in fragments, familiar yet newly arranged, as though it were teaching her language she had always almost known.
Excellent. Now taste. Just a sip. Let it roll over your tongue.
He stepped closer without announcing it, his presence registering as warmth and pressure in the cool cellar air. His attention fixed on her, focused and intent, following every small movement as she raised the glass. The moment tightened, charged with anticipation. As she drank, his gaze lingered on her lips, tracing the smallest details. The tilt of the glass, the way her mouth adjusted, the pause before she swallowed. The act became uncomfortably significant, transformed from a simple tasting into something observed and measured.
Swallow.
It is intense. She swallowed, the wine spreading warmth as it traveled, leaving complexity in its wake. Her reaction was immediate, honest, and unfiltered. The flavor stayed with her, refusing to fade quickly, demanding consideration.
It is complex.
Dominic moved closer still, until Lily felt the solid curve of a wine barrel at her back. The space narrowed, the cellar's vastness collapsing into a single, confined moment. His proximity altered the air between them, making it heavier and more deliberate.
You have a good palate, unspoiled. You are a blank canvas, Lily, and I am going to paint you with the finest things in the world.
The words settled over her like a promise and a claim intertwined. Surrounded by centuries of patience and bottled struggle, the declaration felt amplified, given weight by the cellar itself. The barrels loomed, the bottles watched, and time seemed to pause, as if waiting to see what would be created next. Thunder rolled across the hills like a living creature, deep and furious, shaking the very bones of the villa. Rain did not simply fall from the sky, it slammed down in relentless sheets, battering the tiled roof as if trying to break its way inside. Wind screamed through the vineyards, ripping through leaves and snapping branches, carrying with it the sharp promise of destruction. The air was charged and metallic, each flash of lightning briefly painting the world in stark white before plunging it back into chaos.
Lily, get your boots. The storm is turning into hail. We need to cover the north vines, now.
Dominic burst through the villa doors, rainwater flying from his coat, his voice cutting through the roar of the storm. His urgency was born of years spent reading the land, knowing exactly how quickly nature could turn from generous to merciless. Outside, the vines were exposed and fragile beneath a sky that showed no mercy. Hail, it will destroy the crop. Lily's heart clenched at the word. She imagined the tender grapes shredded, months of careful tending erased in minutes. Fear spiked through her chest, but beneath it stirred resolve.
Not if we are fast enough. Move.
There was no more time for hesitation. Boots hit the floor and doors were thrown open as the storm swallowed them whole. Outside, mud churned underfoot, rain stung their skin, and hailstones began to strike the earth like thrown gravel. Chaos ruled the vineyard. Sheets of rain blurred vision, hail bounced violently off the ground, and tarps snapped and writhed in the wind. Every breath came heavy and sharp as they fought the elements and the weight of soaked canvas.
Pull harder, tie it down.
Dominic's commands were punctuated by thunder. His hands burned as he yanked at the ropes, muscles straining and boots sliding in the mud. The vines shuddered under the assault, but still stood. "Sir, the wind is too strong. It's slipping." A sudden gust tore at the tarp and ripped it from Lily's grip. Rain plastered her hair to her face, and mud splashed up her legs as the storm threatened to throw her aside.
I've got it.
Dominic ran to her and planted his feet like roots in the earth. He seized the heavy canvas and fought the wind inch by inch until he forced it back into place.
Get under the shelter. You will get bruised by the hail.
Hailstones struck harder, sharp against skin and ground alike. Dominic's concern was raw and instinctive as he glanced toward Lily while holding the line. "No, I am helping you. This is my soil too." Lily moved beside him, gripping the rope and leaning into the storm with fierce determination. In that moment, the vineyard became something they defended together. They fell into a wordless rhythm. Ropes tightened, knots held, and exhaustion pressed in until the hail thinned and finally stopped, leaving only relentless rain. When it was done, strength drained from them and they collapsed onto the muddy ground. The vines stood covered, battered, but saved.
You are stubborn.
Dominic lay there panting, a breathless laugh hiding beneath his words. What he felt was more than frustration. It was awe. I told you, I am not afraid of dirt. Lily wiped mud from her face and laughed. Her eyes were bright and alive as lightning faded into the distance.
You look magnificent. Most women I know would be crying about their hair. You are laughing in the mud.
Dominic truly saw her then. Mud and rain clung to her, yet she had never looked more real or more beautiful to him. It is just rain, Dominic. To Lily, it was simple, but to Dominic, it tightened his chest in ways he had not prepared for.
No, it is devotion. You fought for my vines like they were your own children. You are freezing. We need to get inside.
He wiped a smear of mud from her cheek and let his touch linger. She trembled from cold and from something unspoken as the storm revealed what lay between them. The bathroom existed as its own small world, sealed off from the rest of the house by a heavy wooden door and a lingering history of cold stone. Steam filled the cramped space in slow, weary clouds, rising from the aging shower like breath from exhausted lungs. The pipes groaned inside the walls, protesting every attempt at warmth, and the air carried the sharp scent of soap mixed with old metal. Water struck tile in an uneven rhythm, more tepid than comforting, turning the floor slick and the mirrors opaque with fog. Outside the door, Dominic hesitated. The sound of the shower running too long gnawed at him, a quiet alarm bell he could not ignore. He raised his hand and knocked with careful urgency, afraid of what silence might mean. His knuckles met wood, the sound swallowed by steam and water, yet his presence shifted the atmosphere, as if the house itself leaned closer to listen.
Lily, are you all right? You have been in there a long time.
From behind the door came her voice, dulled and distorted by steam and echo. It sounded smaller than usual, fragile in a way that tightened something in his chest. The water kept running, indifferent and unable to provide the comfort it promised. I cannot stop shivering. The water is not hot enough. Dominic did not wait for permission. He turned the handle and pushed the door open just enough to slip inside, and the bathroom seemed to exhale around him. Steam spilled into the hallway like a living thing escaping confinement. The contrast hit him immediately. Damp heat against the chill carried in Lily's words. He stayed near the door at first, fully dressed and resolute.
The boiler is old. It takes time.
He reached for the items he had brought, his movements deliberate and almost ritualistic. The heated robe was warm to the touch, a small defiance against the house's age. The glass of brandy caught the dim light, amber and steady, promising warmth that came from within rather than from failing pipes.
Here.
He stepped farther in, stopping short of the shower. The curtain hung between them, thin and opaque, a fragile boundary that preserved decency while doing nothing to diminish the intimacy of the moment. Lily remained unseen, yet entirely present.
Take this robe. It is heated. And drink this. Brandy.
A hand emerged slowly from behind the curtain, pale and trembling, the fingers stiff with cold. The sight struck him harder than expected, a visible measure of how deeply the chill had set into her. Thank you. Dominic's eyes lingered on her hand, noticing the faint, bluish cast beneath her nails. Instinct overrode hesitation, and he caught her hand gently, enclosing it between his own. He rubbed her fingers slowly and carefully, afraid sudden movement might shatter the moment.
Your fingernails are blue.
He continued warming her hand, thumbs pressing lightly as he transferred heat with quiet determination. Guilt surfaced in him, heavy and unavoidable.
I should not have let you go out there. I put you in danger to save some grapes. It was selfish.
Behind the curtain, Lily steadied herself, listening not only to his words, but to the weight beneath them. The water continued its relentless fall as a backdrop to confession. It was necessary. I wanted to be there. I wanted to help you. Dominic's voice softened and dropped lower, as if the steam itself demanded intimacy. He leaned closer to the curtain, his breath fogging the plastic between them.
You help me more than you know. Just by being in this house, you changed the temperature. It used to be cold here, even in summer. Now it feels alive.
The words lingered in the humid air, heavier than steam. Lily's breath caught as awareness sharpened, not of desire, but of proximity and the thin barrier separating them. Dominic, please, step back. I am naked behind this curtain, and you are you. He closed his eyes and rested his forehead against the curtain, just inches from where she stood. The contact was barely there, yet it carried the full force of restraint. His reflection blurred in the fogged plastic as he held himself still through sheer will.
I know, and it is taking every ounce of my willpower to walk out that door.
He straightened slowly and released her hand, the absence of her warmth immediate and sharp. He took a step back, then another, reclaiming the necessary distance with visible effort.
Warm up, Lily. I will wait for you by the fire.
The door closed softly behind him, sealing the steam, the warmth, and the fragile intimacy back into the bathroom. The shower kept running, but the space now felt held and protected, while somewhere beyond the door a fire waited. A few days had passed since the crisis in the vineyards, and the estate had transformed itself accordingly. Where there had once been mud, stress, and the sharp smell of chemicals and wet soil, there was now light, music, and money. The investor gala unfolded beneath towering chandeliers, their crystal facets scattering warm gold across polished marble floors. A soft piano threaded through the air, its notes gentle and refined, mingling with low laughter, clinking glasses, and the subtle rustle of expensive fabrics. The room pulsed with confidence and recovery, a public declaration that the Rossi legacy had not merely survived, but triumphed. Dominic stood at the center of it all with the ease of a man who knew this world intimately. His posture was relaxed, his suit impeccably tailored, yet his attention drifted more than it should have. At his side was Lily, luminous in a gold dress that caught the light with every small movement. She did not blend into the room like the other guests. She anchored it. Her presence was quieter, sharper, grounded by intellect rather than performance. Conversations bent subtly toward them, drawn by curiosity and unspoken tension.
Dominic, the vintage is saved, I hear. And who is this lovely creature? A new model?
Marcus stepped forward with the confidence of inherited wealth, his smile polished and presumptive. He held his wine glass loosely, already appraising Lily with the casual entitlement of a man accustomed to admiration without resistance. His gaze lingered longer than necessary, scanning her as though she were an accessory rather than a person, and the air between them tightened almost imperceptibly.
This is Lily, my head of viticulture. She is the scientist who saved the crop.
Dominic's voice cut through the noise with a measured chill. There was no warmth in his tone, only precision, each word placed deliberately. As he spoke, his body shifted slightly closer to Lily, a subtle but unmistakable assertion. The title he gave her carried weight, and he made sure Marcus heard every syllable of it.
A scientist? She looks too pretty to be a scientist. Tell me, darling, do you know anything about wine, or do you just look good holding a glass?
Marcus let his skepticism show openly, his eyes traveling up and down Lily without shame. The insult was wrapped in charm, delivered with a laugh that expected compliance. Around them, nearby conversations softened, ears tuning in. This was the kind of moment that could either humiliate or ignite, and the room seemed to hold its breath. Actually, Marcus, I know that the Pinot Noir you are holding is slightly corked. The TCA levels are detectable, but I suppose if you just want to get drunk, it does not matter. Lily's voice was calm, almost gentle, but every word landed with surgical accuracy. She did not raise her chin or sharpen her tone. She did not need to. Her confidence radiated from knowledge, from long nights in laboratories and muddy fields. As she spoke, her gaze remained steady on Marcus, unflinching, and the color drained subtly from his face as comprehension and embarrassment took hold. For a heartbeat, silence reigned. Then Dominic laughed, a deep, unrestrained sound that carried pride and unmistakable pleasure. It was the laugh of a man who recognized brilliance and refused to diminish it. Heads turned, and a few guests smiled behind their glasses.
She destroyed you, Marcus. Move along.
The dismissal was effortless and absolute. Marcus hesitated, his authority evaporated, before retreating with a stiff nod. He melted back into the crowd, shoulders tense, leaving behind a wake of whispered amusement. The balance of power had shifted, and everyone in the room felt it.
That was ruthless. I loved it.
Dominic leaned in close, his voice lowered to a private murmur meant only for Lily. His admiration was unguarded now, threaded with something warmer and more dangerous. The distance between them narrowed until the rest of the gala seemed to blur at the edges. I learned from the best. A faint smile touched Lily's lips, not coy, but sincere. It carried the weight of shared battles and earned respect. For a moment, the scientist and the magnate stood not as employer and employee, but as equals who had weathered the same storm. The music shifted, inviting movement. Dominic's hand found Lily's waist, guiding her onto the dance floor. The crowd closed in around them, a living backdrop of silk, diamonds, and ambition. His touch was confident, possessive without being rough, drawing her closer as though the space between them no longer made sense.
You look stunning tonight. That dress, gold suits you. But I prefer you in the mud. It was more honest.
His words were intimate, layered with memory. He remembered her in boots and gloves, hair pulled back, face streaked with dirt and determination. This polished version of Lily dazzled the room, but that other version had changed his world. Dominic, people are watching. You are holding me too close. Lily's awareness flickered outward again to the watching eyes and unspoken judgments. Her voice carried caution, not rejection, and her hands rested lightly against his chest, feeling the steady beat beneath the fabric.
Let them watch. Let them see that the great Dominic Rossi has finally been captured.
There was defiance in his whisper, and vulnerability too. The man who controlled markets and legacies no longer cared for restraint. His world had narrowed to the woman in his arms. Captured?
Enchanted, obsessed. Call it what you want. I do not look at the grapes anymore, Lily. I only look at you.
The confession lingered between them, heavy and electric. Around them, the gala continued with music, laughter, and wealth. But for Dominic, it all receded into irrelevance. Jealousy, pride, desire, and surrender intertwined in a single truth. The empire he had built no longer commanded his gaze. Lily did. The library breathed in the quiet of night, a cathedral of wood and leather softened by the living pulse of a fire. Flames folded and unfolded within the hearth, casting amber light that climbed the shelves and lingered on the spines of old volumes. Shadows stretched long across the rug, pooling beneath the desk like spilled ink. Outside these walls, the estate slept, but here the air held warmth, smoke, and the faint promise of something ripening, as if time itself had slowed to listen. Dominic entered with deliberate care, a polished tray balanced in his hands. Fruit glistened as though freshly washed by moonlight. Strawberries blushed and perfect. Dark chocolate snapped into elegant squares, and honey caught the firelight like captured gold. He set the tray down not as a servant, but as a steward of ritual, arranging the offerings with reverence. Every movement suggested intention, a ceremony older than words, meant to awaken senses dulled by habit.
We need to train your palate further. For the harvest tasting next week.
Is this work or pleasure?
With you, the line is blurred. Sit on the desk. Close your eyes.
She obeyed, the desk cool beneath her as she settled, the edge pressing into the backs of her thighs. When Lily closed her eyes, the world narrowed to sound and scent. The soft hiss of burning logs, the whisper of fabric as Dominic stepped closer, and the perfume of fruit warming in the room. Darkness sharpened anticipation. Each breath felt louder, each pause waited, as though the night leaned in to witness what would be revealed. A strawberry brushed her lips, guided with patience. Its skin yielded at her bite, releasing sweetness that bloomed across her tongue. Juice traced a path she could feel more than see, and the contrast of cool fruit against her warmth sent a quiet shiver through her. Dominic watched in silence, attentive, measuring not just flavor, but reaction, as if this simple act were a test written directly on her senses.
Taste sweet, sour?
Sweet, ripe.
Like you.
The chocolate followed, darker and heavier, its bitterness unfurling slowly. It melted with a patience that demanded attention, coating her mouth in something rich and lingering. The fire popped softly, punctuating the moment. Dominic's presence felt closer now, a gravity she could sense even with her eyes closed, his assessment shifting from professional to personal, from harvest to heartbeat.
And this?
Bitter, rich, like you.
You are getting bold.
He dipped his finger into the honey, lifting it slowly so it stretched into a thin golden thread before breaking. The scent rose of wildflowers and sun-warmed fields, the labor of bees distilled into sweetness. Time seemed to dilate as he brought his hand toward her, offering not just flavor, but intimacy. The space between them charged with unspoken consequence.
Now lick this.
Dominic?
It is local honey from the estate hives. Taste it from my finger. Do you trust me?
Yes. Her tongue met the honey, slow and deliberate. The sound was soft and unmistakable, echoing louder in the hush than any crack of the fire. Sweetness flooded her senses, floral and alive, and with it came the awareness of his skin and his heat, the fragile line of restraint thinning to nothing. Dominic drew a sharp breath, the control he prized slipping away.
You have no idea what that does to me. The way you trust me, the way you take what I give you. I am 55 years old, Lily. I thought I was dead inside, just a caretaker of old vines. But you are the sun. You made me grow again.
His confession settled between them, heavy and luminous. Lily opened her eyes and met his gaze, seeing not the composed vintner, but a man stripped to truth, awakened and afraid of its depth. Firelight carved lines of age and desire across his face, and in that moment, the harvest he spoke of was no longer about grapes or seasons, but about what had been waiting for the right light. Then stop testing me and start loving me. The tray clattered to the floor as fruit rolled and chocolate scattered, the crash ending all pretense. Dominic lifted her, her legs wrapping around his waist as naturally as vines finding a trellis. The library seemed to exhale, shadows dancing faster and the fire roaring its approval. In that charged stillness, the harvest was claimed, not measured or judged, but celebrated.
I am done testing. Tonight we celebrate the harvest.
Morning arrived gently at Castello Rossi, not with urgency, but with patience earned over centuries. The sun rose slowly above the rolling hills, spilling warm gold across the vineyard like a blessing renewed each day. Birds greeted the light with layered song, their calls weaving through the air as if stitching night and day together. Dew clung to every leaf and vine, catching the sunlight in tiny prisms. This was not just another morning. It was the quiet exhale after a long season of holding one's breath. Dominic stood alone on the balcony, his silhouette framed by the ancient stone and the endless rows of vines below. He had stood in this exact place countless times before, measuring harvests, calculating risks, carrying the weight of generations on his shoulders. Yet, this morning felt different. The vineyard no longer looked like a responsibility threatening to fail him. It looked alive, resilient, almost grateful, as though it knew it had been saved. The vines look beautiful today. Lily stepped out onto the balcony, wrapped loosely in a white sheet that fluttered softly in the morning breeze. The early light kissed her bare shoulders and tangled itself in her hair. She looked at the vineyard not as a proprietor or a savior, but as someone who had worked the soil with her own hands, who had whispered hope into the earth when no one else believed. Her voice carried wonder, not pride.
They are ready. The grapes are perfect. Thanks to you. You saved the legacy, Lily.
Dominic turned toward her, and in that motion was the surrender of a lifetime of guarded solitude. His eyes traced the lines of her face as if committing her to memory, though she was already etched into him far deeper than memory allowed. Gratitude swelled in his chest, heavy and undeniable. What she had given him could not be measured in yield or profit. She had given him a future. Does that mean my job is done? Do I leave now? The question landed softly, but its implication thundered between them. Lily asked it with careful calm, yet beneath her composure lived uncertainty, shaped by years of leaving before she could be left. She braced herself for an ending, for the familiar ache of packing up her worth and walking away once the work was complete.
Leave? You are the roots of this place now. If you leave, the garden dies. I have a new contract for you.
Dominic closed the distance between them, his hands rising to cradle her face with reverence. His touch was steady, decisive, as though anchoring her to the truth of his words. The vineyard behind him stood as proof, with roots intertwined beneath the soil, unseen, yet inseparable. His voice carried no command now, only fear of imagining a world without her in it. What kind of contract? Her heart beat louder with each second of silence that followed. The air seemed to thicken, heavy with possibility. Lily searched his expression, reading the vulnerability there, the man behind the legend of the winemaker. She did not dare hope too much, but hope crept in anyway, uninvited and unstoppable.
A lifetime contract. Be the lady of Castello Rossi. Be my partner. Be my wife. I will give you the world, Lily. Every acre of land. Every bottle of wine. Just stay.
Dominic lowered himself to one knee, the ancient stone cold beneath him, with history bearing witness. In his hand, the ring caught the sun, a vintage ruby deep as red wine, aged, imperfect, and breathtaking. It was not an offering of wealth, but of permanence. In that moment, he laid his entire life at her feet, unguarded and irrevocable. I do not want the land. I just want you. The grumpy, bossy winemaker. Tears spilled freely as Lily spoke, each one carrying the weight of choices, fears, and quiet longing. She laughed through them, trembling with relief. What she wanted could not be deeded or bottled. She wanted the man who challenged her, who trusted her, and who stood before her now without armor.
He is yours forever.
A smile softened Dominic's face, erasing years of severity. It was the smile of a man who had finally stopped bargaining with fate. Forever was no longer a distant concept or a risk to be calculated. It was a promise, spoken simply and meant completely. He lifted her into his arms, and the world spun not from uncertainty, but from joy. Her laughter rang out, bright and unrestrained, joining the birdsong and the whisper of the vines. In that spinning moment, the past loosened its grip, and the future settled gently into place. I spent my life waiting for the perfect vintage. I did not realize the sweetest thing I would ever taste was not wine. It was her.